Welcome to the Casey Zavaleta podcast. This podcast is for those who are in pursuit of high performance and for those who are interested in living with intentionality. We'll explore the practices, habits, and mindsets that will help you to be better in your personal life and in your professional life. Your time and attention is a gift that I promise not to take for granted. Thank you for being here. Hey there. Welcome to the podcast. This is officially episode 1 of the Casey Zavaleta podcast, and I'm super excited to be talking to you today. Over the last couple of weeks, I've given a decent amount of thought to what the heck I wanted episode 1 to be about. It feels like there's a little bit of extra pressure that comes with episode 1 because it sets the tone for the rest of the show. This podcast, as I've shared, is about high performance and living with intentionality. So I really thought about, what do I need people to know? What must people understand if they are seeking high performance or seeking to be able to live more purposefully and with greater intentionality and with greater focus? And perhaps it's because of my background as a health and fitness professional, but I just kept coming back to these 6 pillars that I see as the foundation of your health. I believe that health in and of itself is the foundation of all other excellence in your life. If these 6 things are not in place and considered, it is going to hold you back from being able to reach the goals that you have for yourself personally and the goals that you have for yourself professionally. So today we are going to be talking about the 6 pillars of health, which form the foundation for all performance and everything that we're going to talk about as we move forward with this podcast. The 6 pillars that I'm going to talk about today are in an order. And while nothing is black and white when we talk about health and fitness, I did purposefully put them in this order because I think that they should be considered in this order. So number 1 will be what I see as the most important foundational thing, all the way through to number 6. So you might be tempted to ask me, Casey, but what's the most important thing for me to focus on right now? And I cannot answer that, because the answer is going to be different for everyone. Which one of these is your weakest link right now? That's the one to focus on. So you may be really solid in 4 or 5 of these areas, but then there's just that one that in this phase of life, maybe you haven't considered as much, and maybe it's time to lean into that one. So as we go through, I hope that this episode provides an opportunity for you to do a little bit of self-reflection. I hope it provides this moment of pause for you to do an evaluation on your life as it stands. As we do this, the intention is not to be judgmental, but really to just step back and try to be a third-party observer as we talk through each of these pillars. How would you assess yourself in that area? If you're a numbers person and you love to quantify things, feel free as we go through in these 6 areas to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in each area. That way it'll be very obvious which one is the lowest score and which one should you focus on. If you're not a numbers person and you hate trying to quantify things that probably aren't really quantifiable, no problem. Just write out or think through how you're feeling about that area of your life and whether you're satisfied with that area or not. I think when it comes to these things, we need to trust our guts. We know the answer for ourselves. We tend to spend a lot of time seeking answers about our health and well-being outside of ourselves, looking for information on the internet, listening to podcasts, reading books, trying to find the right answer for us. But in reality, nothing external from you can give you the right answers for you. That comes from inside of yourself. It comes from taking in all the information and then distilling it down and saying, here's the thing that I think is most impactful for me to focus on. Okay? Let's get into our 6 pillars. Pillar number 1 is sleep. This is the number 1 pillar and the foundation of all other performance in your life. Now, it's interesting, back when I was just starting out as a personal trainer and I was talking to my clients about sleep, there was a bit of a hustle culture that was still very present at that time, and our society hadn't really absorbed the importance of the amount of sleep that you get, and there was definitely still some glorification around being able to survive on that. I only got 5 hours of sleep last night and I'm grinding through my day, or, I haven't gotten any sleep all week. And that was still something that was like put up on a pedestal. So when I was first talking about this as a personal trainer, I remember I did an informational session outside of the gym on sleep, and there was a lot of information that I shared. It was the first time that people were hearing about it, and it was really impactful. Now, luckily, this has become a super popular topic in the last couple of years, to the point where I think there's a ton of awareness now around the importance of getting enough sleep and really maximizing the quality of your sleep. But I know that there are still some pockets of the corporate world where it's like hustle culture, go, 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 and just sort of this disregard for your sleep. So I'm not going to beat this pillar to death, because there are so many fantastic resources out there now that you can go to get all the information from the experts. But there are just 3 areas that I want to touch on when it comes to your sleep, because I think these are the 3 things to consider. Absolute most important thing is the quantity of sleep that you're getting. Are you getting enough sleep? I think this is important to track because it's really easy to trick yourself. Your brain tricks itself into maybe thinking it's getting enough sleep. If you're like at the 6.5 hour mark, you're barely getting by. You might feel like you're getting enough, but it's only in tracking when you're going to bed and when are you waking up that maybe you understand that you're not getting that ideal 7 or 8 hours of sleep. Now, when I say 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I mean sleep. So what that's going to require is probably an even longer period of time in bed, because we wake up, right, at certain points of the night. So just to give a very general overview of our sleep cycles and how they work. During the night, we go through these about 90-minute sleep cycles as the night progresses. And we transition into these different phases of sleep within that 90 minutes. So we start out in like a light stage of sleep, and then we move on to another stage that's a little bit deeper. And then we move on to what we call deep sleep. Deep sleep is where your body recovery happens. So if fitness is important to you and performance in that way is important to you, this deep sleep is where your body is repairing its tissues, you're building muscle, all those good body recovery things happen within that deep sleep phase. And then we go into what we call REM sleep, which is the dreaming phase of sleep. And REM sleep is where we consolidate memories, we consolidate any learnings from the day. It's where creativity and ideation is developed. So it's sort of a lot more cognitive, but also incredibly important. So we're going through these phases of sleep, and after each cycle, we transition and touch back to that light phase of sleep. And a lot of people will kind of wake up a little bit. You don't even remember that this happens. Most of us don't even remember that this happens during the night, but we are awake for little periods during the night before we move into that next phase of sleep. So then if we think about we need to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, if we're in bed for 7 hours and we're having those little wake ups throughout the night, we probably didn't actually get 7 hours of sleep. So quantity wise, just make sure that you're in bed long enough to be getting enough sleep. That's like the most important thing that you can do. Then the next thing to think about is the quality of sleep that you're getting. So great to be in bed for a long time, but if it's crappy sleep and you're not completing full sleep cycles, or you're spending long periods of time awake, maybe you're not entering that deep sleep because you can have a phase where you skip the deep sleep or it's really quick, then those would be situations where the quality isn't where we want it to be. And that would be something to focus on. Now, if you want your sleep quality to be better, a couple of things that you can think about are, what are you doing in those 2 hours before bed? Do you have some sort of wind down routine that down regulates your nervous system and calms your mind and gets you ready to go to sleep? Thinking about light exposure is a huge one here. So that includes being on your phone and being on a screen and getting all of that blue light stimulation, which just wakes up your brain and isn't great to do before bed. Did how many of us sit in bed and we're scrolling on our phone every night, right? But actually, one of the worst things that you could do for your sleep, that blue light from the screen, it actually suppresses the production of melatonin, which is your body's naturally occurring sleepy hormone that helps you to get to sleep. It can decrease it as much as 50% by being on that phone. So it can cause you to actually fall asleep an hour, 2 hours later than you would have if you weren't on that screen and watching that blue light. Now, beyond the light from your screen, other artificial lighting that we have in our house can also be stimulating and can also tell your body it's time to be up. It's not time to go to sleep. So thinking about in those couple hours before bed, taking the lights down, doing activities that are calming and relaxing, maybe not watching this, high suspense horror show, maybe not watching True Detective right before bed, which is, full disclosure, what I've been doing in the last week. But all of those things are not helping our sleep quality. So really thinking about that bedtime routine. Now, this episode is meant to be an overview. So I'm doing my best not to deep dive in on these things. As we go through, if there's a pillar that you're interested in learning more about, seek resources on it. I absolutely recommend that if you have not, that everyone on this earth read at least one book about sleep and get that really full overview of why it's so important that we sleep. But also let me know, because in the future, we can do a full episode on each one of these pillars that you all are interested in. Okay, so main thing I'm going to say about quality is just looking at your bedtime routine. Okay, so we've got our quantity, making sure you're in bed long enough. We have our quality and establishing some sort of routine and making sure we're winding down before bed. And then we have our timing. So what hours are you spending in bed? And is that consistent throughout the week? So our body functions on a circadian rhythm. You've likely heard of this sort of 24-hour cycle that actually all of our bodily functions, every single cell and organ and system in our body functions on this cycle. So there are certain times of the day where they're more active and then certain times of the day where they're less active. And in order to optimize everything, all the amazing things that are going on in our bodies, we want that rhythm to be really solid. So it's very clear. Digestive system, turn on now. Sleep cycles, kick in now. Deep sleep, kick in now, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that's going on in our body, right? Skin, rejuvenate now. I mean, you could think of anything. So we want those rhythms to be really strong to optimize all of those functions. And what that requires is consistency in the timing of our sleep. It also requires consistency in some of the other things, including nutrition and including light exposure, including activity, caffeine intake. There's lots of other stuff, but the most important for setting your circadian rhythm is sleep. So the more consistent that we can get our sleep schedule, the better. It's going to be easier for you to fall asleep. This is also going to improve your sleep quality. And, when we think about normal life, this is really tough, especially on the weekends, right? Most of us have a certain schedule during the week, and then we have a certain schedule on the weekends. And the weekends tend to just be shifted a lot later. That throws off our circadian rhythm. So if you're really off on the consistency, I'm not a robot, and I never advocate for perfection or, trying to be super regimented to the point where it's detrimental to like your well-being and mental and the other pillars that we're going to talk about. But if you know that you're off by like 4 hours, like you're going to bed at 10 p.m. during the weekday and you're going to bed at 2 a.m. every weekend, maybe just try to reduce the gap down a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but maybe you could start going to bed at 1 a.m. on weekends, or maybe even midnight, right? Start whatever fun you're having a little bit earlier in the night. It really does make a big difference for our sleep. So I said that I recommend that if you haven't, please read a book about sleep. The one that's the most famous, and I think really put this topic on the map the most, is Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It's a fantastic place to start. Highly recommend. If you're interested in learning more about the rhythm piece, one of my favorite books is called The Circadian Code by Dr. Sachin Panda. And he goes into how you can optimize all of those functions by getting your body on that solid rhythm. Its scope is beyond just sleep, but one of my absolute favorites. And then a couple of others that you could look at. There's a great one called The Sleep Solution by Chris Winter, and another one that's really focused on addressing the hustle culture of the corporate world and really, really drives home why you should get enough sleep. So the quantity part is The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely recommend that you check out one of those. So our first pillar was sleep. In my opinion, the foundation most important to address. We're not going to be performing well and performing optimally, physically or mentally, if we're not sleeping. The next pillar is fitness. Fitness is so powerful because moving your body has this knock-on effect on our health physically and our health mentally. It really improves everything about our lives and our mood and our well-being when we're engaging in fitness. I've been in this world of fitness for a long time, so I have a lot that I could share about it, but I think the most important things to know if we're thinking about a foundation or a springboard for other performance in our life is that we have something that we enjoy, a way of moving our body that we enjoy and we can commit to. That's kind of like the most important thing. You like yoga? Awesome. Go to yoga class. You like CrossFit? Great. Knock yourself out going to CrossFit. You like running? Cool. Go out for a run in the morning. I really think that the world of fitness can get quite dogmatic about this is the best method. This is the best way to train. But honestly, most of the battle is won if you find something that you enjoy and therefore can commit to and can do consistently. What I hate is that, when people are like, oh, I've been going to the gym lately. And it's like that for 3 months, and then they fall off for the next 3 months. And then they're back to, I'm back to going to the gym for the next 3 months. And, they're in sort of this like on and off cycle. We should try to avoid that and try and just work something into our lives that's consistent and that we know is going to be there. Now, if we are thinking about optimizing our fitness, there are 2 areas that I think that we should be addressing. again, without getting too dogmatic, it is incredibly important that you address something in terms of your strength, which requires a form of resistance training, and then something in terms of your cardiovascular health, which includes some form of purposeful heart rate and breathing rate elevation. Now, the reason that I think both of these are so important and we should try not to live all in one camp or all in the other is because they address different things in terms of our health. So our strength helps us to retain muscle mass, which is amazing for our metabolic health. It's also amazing for our joint health, for the integrity of our bones. It's great for our nervous system to give it that sort of stimulation with a high load. Now, when I'm talking about strength training, I don't mean 2-pound weights that you're like going on a walk with. That's adding a little bit of extra load to your cardio, but strength training is really engaging in movements with loads that are so heavy that you're doing like 1 to, I'm going to say 8. Traditionally, strength training, we think of it as 1 to 5 reps. But I'm going to say, you know what? Great. If you're doing loads that are hard for 8 reps, I call it strength, right? We're purposefully engaging in hypertrophy at that point, which means building up of our muscles, which is hugely, hugely important as we age for men and women, but especially for women who tend to not retain a ton of muscle mass as we go through menopause. So we're engaging in some form of strength training, right? It can look like a lot of different things. Use the machines at the gym if you want, or, get under the barbell and squat if you want. It should work for you, but strength training is like a must. Cardio is also a must. So there was this sort of wave that came through the fitness industry where it was like, cardio is killing your gains, right? Because people were trying to maximize their hypertrophy and building muscle. And they were saying like that these long bouts of cardiovascular training were actually, eating away at muscle and weren't allowing you to maximize like the muscle growth. What that misses is that most people, right? Think about what people die of in old age. Most of the time, it has to do with the cardiovascular system or cardiorespiratory system, right? Cardiovascular just having to do with the heart and blood flow circulation. Cardiorespiratory now has to do with oxygen exchange in your lungs and your breathing. Okay. Most of the time, it's what? It's heart attack, stroke, atherosclerosis, emphysema. Like there are all of these ailments that we die of in old age that have to do with our cardiorespiratory system. Cardio works the cardiorespiratory system. So it's super important. Now, we don't have to overthink this, right? Like it doesn't mean that you need to be engaging in an intensity of cardiorespiratory training that has you like keeled over and heaving and wanting to throw up. Not needed. This could be that you're doing what we call zone 2 cardio, which basically just means it's that level where your heart rate is elevated and your breathing is elevated. And it's like a little bit more challenging for you to talk, but you could still hold a conversation. Like you're not in that place where you can't even talk to the person next to you. So that counts, right? That could look like going out for a bike ride. It could look like a pretty well-paced walk. It's going to look different for everyone, but we should be addressing both of these consistently during our week. What I'm talking about is not talking about optimizing this pillar of fitness, which we can absolutely do a deeper dive into later on the show. But what I'm talking about is how can you use your fitness to put you in a good place with your health and well-being so that you can achieve what you're looking to achieve in your life. so that you're setting yourself up for success, so that your health is not holding you back from living your life the way that you really want to live it. One last thing that I want to leave you with in terms of fitness is a very, very important question to ask yourself if you are engaging in fitness on a regular basis. Is the fitness that you're doing preventing you from injury or causing injury? Now, that comes with a slight grain of salt because when we engage in resistance training, it's normal for little things to happen. It's normal to get a little niggle or a little pull or, hammy doesn't feel great right now, or maybe something happened with a joint, you tweaked it a little bit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on a consistent basis, is your training causing injury in a way that's hindering your life, or that's causing you to have to take time off from the gym or completely overhaul your training program so that you can't continue to make progress? I see people sometimes that are engaging in fitness at such an intensity or in such a way where it feels like every couple of months they've got something going on. And it just always makes me wonder, is it really beneficial at that point if you're causing yourself injury on a regular basis? If you've got that thing, right? Maybe it's your low back, maybe it's your knee, maybe it's a hip. If you've got that thing, a shoulder, that keeps popping up for you and continuously pops up, and the way that you're engaging in fitness is not making it better over time, I encourage you maybe to just step back a little bit and reflect on your process. There could be something that you want to do differently just to ensure that the way you're engaging in fitness is helping you and not hurting you. Okay, I'm holding myself back and trying so hard not to make this a 2-hour episode and dive into all of these things. All of these things we will continue to talk about as we move on with the show. Telling myself that as much as I'm telling you that. So we've been over our 2 pillars, the things that I see as the first 2 pillars. We've talked about sleep and we've talked about fitness. Next is the one that I struggle with the most. It tends to just be that pillar that's always lowest for me if I was going to rate myself, and that is stress regulation. Stress regulation is so crucial for our physical and mental well-being. Being in a state of chronic stress means that there are chronically elevated levels of cortisol in your system, which, put simply, just jacks us up. Our bodies are not meant to deal with cortisol coursing through our veins all the time. But in the world that we live in and in a lot of the work environments that we're in, where we're constantly on edge and things are being demanded of us and there are notifications coming in and there's so many things to manage, we've created these lives and work and, at home that feel so stressful and chaotic sometimes. It is hugely detrimental to us. I think we can all intuitively understand that it's really detrimental in terms of our mental health, because obviously that's going to lead to, more feelings of anxiety. And I think anxiety is something that we as a society deal with chronically a lot more than we used to. But also, this has physical effects. This affects our metabolic health. So just as a very general overview, here's a way to think about it. We have all these stress hormones coursing through our veins throughout the day, right? And that includes, I talked about cortisol, but it also includes adrenaline, norepinephrine, all of these things that are stimulating hormones. And when those are coursing through our body, it makes our body think that we need energy, because historically, from an evolution perspective, whenever we were stressed and adrenaline ramps up, it was probably because there is an imminent danger. Gotta run away from the bear, gotta run away from the lion, gotta save our lives. right? And so in order to do that, we need energy, and we need energy right now. So it causes this release of glucose into the bloodstream so that that energy can be used to run away from the lion. Nowadays, though, if we're just sitting at our computer and an email comes in that's super stressful and all of these hormones ramp up, we don't need that glucose because we're not physically needing to run away from anything, but the body still releases the glucose. And so when you think about having high blood sugar or being pre-diabetic or diabetic, all of these things that are incredibly detrimental to our health, this can be part of the reason why that happens. So what can we do to bring our stress down? This is me preaching this to myself as much as it is me sharing it with you. In order to stay out of that chronically elevated and stressed state, we should work relaxing practices into our day. These don't have to be fancy. They can be simple. I actually advocate that you keep them as simple as possible. But anything that grounds you and down-regulates your nervous system and takes you out of that fight or flight, that high stress zone, is good. So things that come to mind are breathing. Can you do 5 to 10 grounding and cleansing breaths when that email comes in, right? Can you recenter yourself and just take a moment, take that pause? Anything that's a meditative or mindfulness related practice, I think, can be fantastic for this. I think gentle movement and yoga or stretching to get yourself into your body and out of that, place where you're mentally kind of going off can also be beneficial. This is going to look a little bit different for everyone. One thing that I've noticed personally is that when I am the most stressed, writing, like a free write where I just get things out of my head and onto paper, can be incredibly helpful, because what it does is it helps to reframe my thoughts. Because when we reframe our thoughts, we can take things out of that panicked mode, the frame with which we see everything as a threat or as negative, and we can come down into a more positive and relaxed space. So stress regulation is number 3. It's really high up there. I think this is one that a lot of people who nail their fitness and nutrition and recovery and sleep maybe even are kind of missing this one because they're a little bit go, go, go all the time. And so what's that specific way that you use to bring yourself down and help reframe your thoughts and come out of that fight or flight zone? Okay, we are on to number 4. Number 4 is connection. I think this starts with a connection with yourself. Do you know yourself? And are you good with yourself? Before we can form meaningful connections with others outside of ourselves, and before we can have really healthy relationships in our lives, you have to have a healthy relationship with yourself. So that's the first most important thing. And I saw this really clearly, I would say, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, when I was very self-conscious. I did not have a lot of confidence. I was trying so hard to be liked by everyone and to please everyone that I was just chasing things and pretending to be interested in things and trying to show up in ways that weren't true to myself, because I wasn't considering what is true to myself. Who am I at my core, and what are the things that matter to me, and Can I have confidence in that no matter what others are saying or no matter what the messaging is in the outside world? It took a very long time to improve on that, but I noticed that as I was able to improve on that and gain more self-confidence and form this better relationship with myself, the relationships in my life outside of myself all started to improve. Really fascinating. It was sort of this effect that I noticed as it was happening and really just helped me to understand how important it is to first have that relationship with yourself. Then once you have that solid relationship with yourself, connection is something that is innate to us as humans. We are social creatures, and it contributes to our well-being to have really strong and trustful and true relationships in our lives. Now, what I want to say is that the quantity of relationships, of solid relationships that you have, does not matter. I don't remember if it was Brene Brown or Mel Robbins. It was one of the two that I learned this from. I think it was Mel. She was saying that you only need a small handful of 4 a.m. friends, is what she called them, 4 a.m. friends, in your life to be solid in this pillar and for your need for connection as a human being to be fulfilled. A 4 a.m. friend is just what it sounds like. It's that person that you'd be able to call up at 4 a.m. and say, I need you. Can you take me to the hospital? Or can you come over? Or can you go get me something? Someone that you can call up and say, it's an emergency, I need you. And they would come, no questions asked. Now, someone that you'd be comfortable calling up, right? And that they, of course, would be comfortable to receive that call and help you out. You only need a couple. It's like 2 or 3 of those is enough to satisfy this pillar. So, sometimes depending on your personality type, right? Like I've never been a person that's super extroverted and has like huge networks of friends. And, I can't make the invite list to my wedding because it's just like so many people that I would want to invite. Like that's never been me. But I see others where this is the case, where it feels like it's just large quantities of relationships that aren't necessarily 4 a.m. friends. They're just there, and maybe they're serving a specific, social purpose. They're like your happy hour friend or your work friend. And those are good. It's good to have those in our lives so that we have activities that we can do with people and, we can explore things with these certain people, these friends. But at the end of the day, to like fulfill that deep human need for strong connections, those aren't the relationships where that's going to happen. The types of relationships where that's going to happen are with your partner, if you have one, are with your immediate family members, and with those 4 a.m. friends. And I think in this area, what happens is, if this area maybe is a little bit lower for you, what happens is we just prioritize and fill our schedules with other things, and we forget to carve out purposeful time for connection. Purposeful, high quality time to focus on those relationships that are most important and most meaningful in our lives. Instead we end up working super long hours, or we're trying to get to the gym and we're trying to sleep and, we're trying to do all of these other things. And then we just get in the mode of like always needing to be productive. Got to run the errands on the Saturday afternoon. So like can't have brunch with the girlfriend, for example. We just get in that mode of not purposely carving out the time. And what we're learning is that it's also not necessarily the quantity of time that makes a difference in these relationships, but the purposeful quality of time that makes a difference. My best friend lives in Canada, and now since I live in Los Angeles, I don't get to see her very often. But our relationship stays strong both because of the foundation that's there and has been there for years, but also because the time that we do spend together or that we do talk on the phone is so high quality that I feel so deeply connected to her. And it's the idea of that friend that you can just pick up with no matter how much time has passed by, because the quality of the interaction is there. So when you think about this and, needing to carve out the time for connection, just know it doesn't have to be a daily thing. It doesn't have to be even a weekly thing, but doing it on purpose, I think, is very important. So that is our fourth pillar, is those meaningful connections. Our fifth pillar is purpose. Purpose is going to look like a lot of different things to different people. At the end of the day, the heart of this pillar is, do you have something that is beyond yourself and feels greater than yourself, that gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you want to learn and grow and be a better version of yourself? If you can answer that with, yes, I do, then this pillar is probably fulfilled for you. But I think it leads to a lot of mental struggle and, I don't want to say depression, but like depressive feelings like listlessness and fatigue and challenge with focusing when we don't have this. Now, like I said, this looks super different to different people. For some, they find a ton of purpose out of simply being a parent. And that is the role that brings them this greater purpose and meaning in life, and that fulfills this area. There are others where their work and their career, because they feel like what they're doing in their career is making an impact and is important for the world, no matter what the scale is with that can bring them a lot of purpose. It might be about a cause that you really care about, that you're advocating for. That could bring you a lot of purpose. It might be about, a hobby that you have that you feel like brings light and joy to people. It could be about generating content and thoughts and ideas and getting them out into the world. But no matter what, it's about something that is beyond yourself. I think as humans, mentally and emotionally, we just do a lot better when we have something like that. It gives us drive. It gives us forward momentum. It gives us, again, that reason to self-actualize and learn and be better and grow. I also believe that spirituality falls under this category, because no matter whether you're religious or not, if you identify as spiritual in some way, that is about connecting to something that's beyond you, connecting to a greater good and wanting to be better. It's about understanding that there's something beyond yourself. And I think that selflessness brings something very important to our health and well-being. So the fifth pillar was purpose. The final pillar, and you may have been waiting for this one and wondering why it wasn't higher up on the list, the final pillar is nutrition. I do think it is very important what you decide to put in your body, and that what you're putting in your body feels nourishing for you, and you're providing your body with the nutrients that it needs to carry out all of these essential functions and to perform well in your life, right? This really maximizes both your physical and mental well-being as well. Now, this is simply my opinion and my perspective, but I think that some place too much importance on this pillar to the detriment of other things that we've talked about. So there is certainly a way to get so dialed in on your nutrition and optimizing it. Maybe you're tracking your macros, tracking your calories, which I do not think are bad things, by the way. But there is a way to get so in the weeds of that stuff that in reality, it brings you stress. It causes stress in your life. Or there's a way to do it that actually reduces the amount of connection that you have with others. Because how many times are those quality experiences of connection had surrounding food in some way? If your worry about your nutrition and optimizing it is so high that it takes you out of that, I think overall it's actually taking away from your health and well-being and not contributing to it, even if you hit your protein goals for that day. So this is my perspective. I do think it depends where your baseline is. It depends what your starting point is. Some of us maybe have not really ever purposefully considered our nutrition and the quality sources of nutrition that we're putting in our body. And so there's a lot of room for growth in terms of purpose and intentionality within that. And maybe we need to do some more information gathering about what would help us to optimize our nutrition and support our metabolic health, right? Like maybe some of us are living in that camp. And then maybe others of us have read all the books on nutrition and we've done the deep dive and we're more in that camp of meticulously trying to be perfect with our nutrition and eating in a certain way. And that group of people needs something very different. So it's very challenging to give any hard and fast rules about what you need to do for your nutrition because it is so much based on personal experience and based on your perspective and sort of that world that you're living in when it comes to nutrition. It is absolutely on this list because I believe that nutrition is very important, but it is also purposefully on this list as number 6 because I believe that there are many other things that also are pillars that contribute to our health besides nutrition. Okay. So again, let's just come back to this idea of it depends on what your starting point is in all of these areas. I hope that as we've gone through, you've taken this space to do a little reflection on each of the pillars for yourself. Maybe you rated them on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe you just did a little check-in about how each of these things is for you. And I hope it became clear which one is the one that's maybe lagging behind the others and would be most beneficial for you to lean into. So let's just one more time review our pillars. Our first one was sleep. Our second one was fitness. Then we had stress regulation. Then we had connection. And then we had purpose. And finally, we have nutrition. I'm sure that there are others that we could have talked about, but I see these as the big things. And if we want to move forward in this show and talk about achievement and talk about, reaching these lofty goals that I hope that you have for yourself and really wanting to grow and evolve and be better, I wholeheartedly believe that these 6 things form the foundation for you to be able to do all of those other fantastic things in your life. It's about living with intentionality and it's about being purposeful. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I really enjoyed today's episode and I hope you have too. Since this show is just starting out, it would be incredibly helpful if you could take 60 seconds and write a quick review for the podcast to help me start to share it and help me start to spread it to others. I appreciate your time and attention so much. I know that there are so many things in this world that are vying for your time and attention, and so I honestly see it as a gift that you've decided to give me some of that, and I hope that I can just continue to return the favor and provide as much value as possible on the show each week. Okay, everyone, thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.